Tsao-Lin Moy, who's an acupuncturist, and she is known as the Natural Fertility Expert. And she's trained in East Asian medicine and helps couples conceive naturally using her fertility protocols and Chinese medicine. And she is the founder of Integrative Healing Arts in New York City, which utilizes acupuncture, herbal medicine, and energy healing to treat patients. And so she has had over 19 years of experience in alternative and Chinese medicine and is a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist. She's also the best-selling author of Will I Ever Get Pregnant? The Smart Woman's Guide to Getting Pregnant Naturally Over 40. She's a contributor for mindbodygreen and has been featured on Dr. Oz, TheListTV, Good Day New York, WNET, MetroFocus, BOLDTV, and in publications like Well+Good, Askmen, Insider, Parenthood, Eat This Not That, Parents Life, Best Life Online, MSN, Martha Stewart, Authority Magazine, Healthline, Yahoo, Lifestyle, IAM&CO Media, and Thrive Global. Oh my gosh, you've been all over the place, Cho. That's amazing.
So, yeah, like lots of places.
Yeah. So, we talked, the reason I had asked you to come on to my podcast, besides, you being a natural fertility expert, was also because we talked about, natural treatments for depression using acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And, I would love for you to enlighten our audience about what exactly is Chinese medicine. I think a lot of people know what acupuncture is, but not so many people know what Chinese medicine is and how that's different from conventional treatments. And why would someone go to Chinese medicine and acupuncture as opposed to conventional medicine? Or how do they know to maybe search for those options if they feel like conventional medicine is failing them?
That's a great question. And the difference of what Chinese medicine is. So Chinese medicine is really an umbrella of several branches, which include within it are acupuncture, herbal medicine, body work. There's also food, exercise, meditation. You would do something, the feng shui, your external environment, your internal environment. So, and it's about cultivating health through many different channels.
A lot like functional medicine, actually.
Yeah, it can. The perspective is really that, to help the person to heal themselves. And the difference being that it is a generative model versus broken and fix. So we're looking at all of the things that are going to be contributing to that person, like why are they not getting well? And so you look at the entire pattern, you look at their whole history, their family dynamics, many things that are the starts. You want to look at all aspects that are influencing their health that may result in certain kinds of imbalances in their blood, or other kinds of problems and symptoms, such as what would be considered like diseases. And so the difference being is that you're looking at the whole person. And then the methodology of treating that whole person is you have all of these tools. And the patient is a participant. Like, you're not doing it to them. You're really the guide for them on their journey to help them get a better mind-body connection. And then they can like direct their own healing.
Right. So you're saying it's different in that way from conventional medicine, but actually you're describing functional medicine. I mean, functional medicine is exactly the way you described it. So tell me more about the tools that you use, because obviously I don't do Chinese medicine and I don't do acupuncture. So it'd be great for all of us to learn about what those tools are used for and how you use them.
Sure. So really important is diagnostically understanding a whole meridian system. It's a lot. So you have to learn the different patterns, but then you're also learning, it's really like, who are you treating? And so when you're looking at that person, then, what is the pattern? So it could be the same, like we'd say in a very classic and famous saying is same illness, different treatment, different treatment, a different illness, same treatment, right? So you're looking at what is that source of it, and you're honing in on not the disease part, but what's manifesting in that person. Right? So the tools that are used that help facilitate the healing are things like acupuncture, knowing, what is, let's say, a reflex, testing it to see if that is going to make a difference, and then choosing how you're going to treat it in terms of your strategy. And I want to differentiate also that in this country, people think Chinese medicine is TCM, right? Because that's a brand.
Right.
And TCM is a much more modern iteration where they've taken certain standards and made protocols. So it fits much closer to Western model of, oh, you have this, do this.
Oh, I did not know
take
that.
herbal formula. Yeah. So it is actually, the TCM is less personalized than when you're working with someone who's traditionally trained.
Right. And so TCM stands for what?
Well, they call it traditional Chinese medicine, but it's actually different than classical Chinese medicine.
Okay.
But they go, oh, traditional Chinese. It takes certain aspects of it and they codified it. So once it becomes standardized, as you know, standard practice, then what happens is it gets diluted.
And it's cookie cutter, becomes cookie cutter.
It's much more cookie cutter, which is why it's very attractive. Here is like, it's very cookie cutter to say, well, what herb do you think I should take when I have this allergy? It's like, well, there are herbs that can help, but in your particular situation, we really need to know like why, like there's a deeper thing. The symptom is the symptom of an underlying aspect that is showing up.
Right.
Right. Yeah, so that's would be, the difference is really, yes, people have certain symptoms or illnesses and how they manifest in their body. And as you know, if you're practicing functional medicine, the people turn to, let's say, our medicine because they're not getting the results.
Right.
They're, the disease is being treated, but they're not being treated with the disease, or it's being missed because they don't conform to a textbook of what it is. And so it gets missed.
Right.
Missed all the time. It's like, oh, it can't be that. And you're like, oh, but that's what it is. It is. Right? Women are different than men genetically. Modern times now we're traveling, living everywhere, but genetically we also are more adapted to the places of our origin. So the foods that we eat here maybe are not so good for our system, right? And then over time that creates a lot of problems for us.
Right.
So those are things that often are not really looked at, because you're looking at, oh, it's, it's got this amount of nutrition, that amount. And so it really takes apart the really where the idea of health and healing and really being healthy, like what is healthy?
Right. So do you actually prescribe a diet, a specific diet?
If I look at what are people eating, right? Because clearly that's something you can control. What are you contributing to your health?
Right.
And so oftentimes, definitely I would say more like get away from the processed foods, the artificial sweeteners, things covered in sugar, fake sugar too, right? Fake sugar, I think is even worse. Like your body can deal with sugar because it's it's in a natural form.
Right.
You still have to limit it, right? But anything that is really kind of over, if it needed a really serious chemical lab to create it, then what's going to happen is your body is going to have to kind of break it down and use it and figure out what to do with all the extra the extra waste.
Right. Well, it has to even recognize it. Like, what is that?
Correct. Yeah.
We've never seen this before. How do we
Yeah.
handle this?
Yeah, and things like what we're experiencing now is there's so much plastic in our environment, right? So even if you're eating organic, like I stopped getting these organic meals that were like vegan, organic, because they were coming in so much plastic. Right. And so it was like, okay, like all of this plastic wrapping is defeating the purpose.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's also contributing to the landfills as well. Just as
yeah.
I stopped getting those meals too. I mean, I think it serves a purpose for those people who aren't there and not really able to cook meals or even get used to eating those kinds of foods. So it's nice to have that convenience. But at some point, once you are able to catch up by changing and learning how to cook and learning how to do all those things, then those kinds of things can drop off. But if you're already cooking, and already eating healthy, it doesn't seem to pay off to get those kinds of meals in a box,
Yeah, now it's like all these plastic, it's a lot of plastic, and
yes.
and we do absorb that into our system, right? And then we definitely are still absorbing it in through the environmental factors.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of diet, the first things that I actually look at are like what could be causing inflammation, right? Because we know that underlying inflammation is part of what creates a huge imbalance in the system. And then that leads to people not healing or having like weird symptoms. Like inflammation can create all of these kind of strange symptoms, autoimmune conditions. We also know that it causes depression, right? Emotional problems, poor sleep, all of it is like all connects together.
Right. Yeah. What are some of the things that you, from your standpoint, from your perspective, see as being causes for depression? From
poor sleep.
Poor sleep.
Social media. A lot of poor sleep. So not getting really the deeper levels of sleep. That's due to stress, right? The constant going, right. The need to succeed, the perfectionism. A big part of it is the electronics and the fact that we have all these smartphones that are smarter than us, or that we have to keep, before they were tools, right, to help us. And then now we're scrambling to keep up with the pace, right? Yeah. And really, yeah.
We become slaves to it.
Right. We've actually enslaved ourselves.
Exactly.
We've enslaved ourselves. And on the one hand, during this pandemic, it's like, okay, great. There's a whole aspect that we're able to communicate and connect. And then on the other hand is that you're never at peace, because there's always, it's like open for business. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So those are the things. Diet for sure, a big contributor. Things like gluten, big red flag. Even if someone says that they're not, that they're fine, I know that more than likely there's something happening. They want to stay away. I promote more of a plant-based diet. I like Dr. Furman's Eat to Live. That is, yeah. So you still have some animal protein, but really you look at evidence that the more animal protein that we eat, the higher the numbers are of inflammation and cancer.
Right.
And so it's really a matter of, changing things for the better.
Right. I mean, it depends on the person, but also the source of that animal protein. Different sources are healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the typical sources are highly inflammatory.
Yeah, well, let's say, for instance, my daughter is vegetarian, but she eats eggs and dairy. Now, dairy can be inflammatory, right? So even though you're kind of like, okay, I'm eating mostly plant-based, and then the only time that I have animal protein is I have cheese, but the thing is that could be not healthy for some people, right? It can cause more problems.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I typically put people on a gluten, dairy, and sugar-free diet. add lots and lots and lots of vegetables, have a small amount of protein, a small amount of grains, if not, the gluten-free grains, and start from there. I think that's a good starting point. And then
yes,
having the diet evolve over time to find what works best for you specifically. But that's a good starting point.
yeah. I mean, that can be, that is also what I suggest. Sometimes though, I just have to go like, let's just eliminate one thing, like
right.
Get rid of that diet Snapple.
Yes.
Like there are always these like funny little things that people are doing that they think it's fine, and it's usually it's something that's hidden that seems like, oh, it's really nothing.
Right.
It's like the one little termite in your house, and you're like, oh, it's just one. You're like, oh, if that one is just the beginning, and so that's where you want to, that's where I also look, because, and also that if it's too big a change, it's hard for them to do it.
Right. So yeah, I usually start in that particular diet, but you're right. You have to start where the person is. So I get so many, older adolescents, young adults that come into my practice, but they're not the ones who are coming to the practice. It's their mother dragging them to the practice. And, I always tell them that, particularly the moms, like it really has to come from the patient being their child or their young adult, older adolescent child. That's really has to be their decision, because they're the ones who have to make the changes. And so, but, a lot of times I make sure that they are willing, to make some changes in their diet. And so it's with them that I start, okay, let's just start with gluten for 3 weeks and let's see how you feel. And then, we'll build from that. So you're right. You have to start where the person's at, in their health
Absolutely.
journey.
And then, like young, young adults, they are still growing and developing. Their hormones are also influencing them, right? So they are going to be, more there are triggers that are going to want them to go for sugar and fried foods and things like that, right? Because that also will satisfy the chemistry in the brain.
Right. Yeah. So are there any, why don't we switch over to talking about acupuncture a little bit? I'm just curious. I mean, I know we talked a little bit about how we don't want to have a cookie cutter approach, but but I've always been interested in knowing, obviously what we just talked about was foundational, that you want to approach the patient in terms of, what's going on with them specifically in their environment and their body. Are there actual acupuncture points for depression and anxiety? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, actually. So what I would say is that, okay, so there are different ones, right? For depending on what it is. So one thing that acupuncture general does is that it taps into the central nervous system. And so what happens is the specific neuropeptides are released in the brain, and people experience a sense of wellness from the inside, right? So this is the mechanism, one of the mechanisms that actually will trigger or facilitate the rest and digest.
Okay.
Overall, right? Then what you look at is, so just knowing that if somebody's going to receive acupuncture, that this is going to be part of that experience. Like this is a mechanism that is going to be happening in their system. And once that kicks in, that will also, the body starts looking around and looking to balance things, to bring things into balance. When a practitioner, let's say if I see somebody and I'm looking at all of the things that are going on, I'm looking at a pattern that, where I'm going to treat what is the underlying, and then I will also use points that are known as functional points that are much more, that are going to work synergistically to specifically help that person with that condition. So with my teacher, and this is also in the books, one of the things is that you look at a map of the body. So like on the feet, this would represent the brain here.
Right.
And the idea is that when someone has depression, that they need some like fresh blood and circulation to go to that body part. It's really that oftentimes there's some kind of inflammation, cytokines they know that actually are a contributor, and it's like for women that have PMS, why do they get cranky and irritable? Increase in the cytokines and the inflammation, which kind of causes that irritability. The same with foods, right? That what does it do? It triggers, and then what that does is it affects their emotions. There's like all of that.
Right. So the root cause is inflammation.
Root cause is inflammation, and there are many places that can do it, right? So so knowing that, what do we need to do? We need to like help the body clear that and stimulate points that are going to reflect that area. So you're bringing attention also to the area by using points. So points on the hands and feet are a representation of the head. So very famous, the point that everyone uses for a headache is actually a command point, we call it, for going to the head. It's a very strong anesthesia point. And for like a toothache, very strong. And so that would be something where we're thinking like, oh, I also want to bring attention to that area. What'll happen though is the body's going to say, oh, okay, attention, let's, what's happening, let's balance that.
Right. So you work off the meridian system, right?
Yes.
That's true. So I'm curious, what is your opinion about acupressure versus acupuncture?
Okay, so acupressure is using acupuncture points.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
as effective in your opinion, or can it be
different? It's different. Okay, so one actually you pierce through the skin, so it taps through a different layer. I mean, you will get some surface stimulation. I mean, it is good. You can open up the channels, if, with acupressure, or in particular with shiatsu, traditionally how it would be done is that you're going through all the meridians and checking them all. And as you're going through, you're actually kind of doing like a cleaning it out, right? Kind of, it's also very diagnostic. So within let's say in a treatment, I do a lot of palpation. I'm going to palpate the different areas where, when I'm looking at the pattern of what's there, and I'm thinking like, okay, all of these signs and symptoms, all of these things that I'm seeing, hearing, sensing from their, their voice and then their pulses, and just like looking at them, because we have constitutional types.
Absolutely.
Certain types of, you're looking at someone who's very swollen, they got a lot of fluid, versus someone who's might be very dry or lacking in, circulation and blood. And so knowing that is like that person, I'm already getting towards like, oh, this is more of this constitution type, and this is where many of those imbalances are. So already we're kind of like getting closer to what more specifically is happening in a pattern, and then really palpating to feel like if those, those meridians are involved.
Right.
Is that the source of it, or that's like the so those are the things that you look at, and then you start to see as things start to change. Right?
Yeah.
Also through,
Yeah. As you're talking, it just shows me how much there's so much overlap in our different traditions, because we talk about palpating, and as an osteopathic physician, I've learned how to palpate the spine and how the muscles intersect along the spine, and you can use it diagnostically, where T4 is connected to the gallbladder and on the right side. And so if there's a little
T7, like in Chinese medicine, T7 is the influential point of the blood. It's also the diaphragm. We look at T10, T10, 11, 12, or like the stomach and the spleen. T18 is really bladder 18 is really between T9 and T10. Right. And so if you actually look, there are specific points on the back, they call them shoe points, that go to pertaining organs. right? Like T5 is considered for anxiety, but it's also for stomach problems.
Oh,
When
that's so
someone has
interesting.
anxiousness and then they get the acid reflux, we know that, we're going to be looking in that area on the back.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It makes me wonder if Andrew T. Still, who created osteopathic medicine, I wonder if he had Chinese medicine influence.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you can see through, at the, what is it, the medical library on Fifth Avenue and 105th Street, you can see that there are like old documents that are Dutch, right? That they brought back when they went over. Yeah. So you can see that they were fascinated with, meridians and things like that. Right. So coming from the East, you've got thousands and thousands of years of really like body work and maps and stuff like that. It would be, I doubt that, someone had just invented it without having, some influence.
And I never put those two together, and it's now coming to me as we're talking about it. It's like, gee, it makes so much sense that he was probably influenced by the Eastern culture.
Oh yeah, and then also you look at chiropractic. I mean, also, bone setting is big in East Asia. Like that's a part of, what you do is like manipulating the body work, how that's done too.
Right, absolutely.
Is much more, yeah.
So let me ask you this, when I'm sure you're familiar with emotional freedom technique, right? Yeah, where it's tapping on the here, and then there's different points. I'm curious if they signify any specific points for you. Like, is that pattern mean anything for you? I'm curious why they
really, other than their beginning, like the one on the top is the meeting point. It's the do 20. So that's the vortex, where the meeting point of like a lot of meridians.
Right. Mostly around the eye here. It's like
around the eyes.
Here, right at the edge of the eyebrow.
That's bladder 1, bladder 2. So they're tapping at the bladder 1.
Yeah.
Right. Stomach 1 is here.
Right.
Yeah.
Then here. Then here. Yeah. And then right at the collarbone. And then in the back, like right there.
Some points on the back. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, and then you go back to the beginning. But but then there's the karate chop point. That a lot of people start that with the karate chop point. Yeah. I was just curious if that had any correlation with Chinese medicine,
Well, I'm pretty sure they took it from the acupuncture points.
Acupuncture, yeah.
They took the points. I mean, those are there are a lot of beginning and end points that are on the face and on the fingers, right? So, just kind of like tapping. I mean, you also know that if you're stimulating the head, right? They're all different. That you're tapping into the nervous system there.
When it comes to depression and anxiety, it's extremely helpful to learn how to do tapping. And so, or emotional freedom technique is what I usually teach my patients, or have my patients learn how to do that. So, but I always wondered if it somehow originated from acupuncture, acupressure, meridian system.
I mean, they took the points. So that is, in terms of, it's not necessarily a technique. I mean, there are there is a technique for stimulating like the whole face that you do, like like a whole face thing, but it's not like this sequence, right? Kind of like the Bikram yoga thing. Like I'm gonna put this together and now I'm gonna call it Bikram yoga, and I'm like making it mine. I'm like, okay, well, yoga is yoga, and then so you can codify it, and then
so now you have an expertise in fertility, and obviously that can cause a different kind of depression. When people want children, and if you're having difficulty getting pregnant, and it's extremely stressful time, and can cause significant depression and anxiety. Yeah, so I would love for you to talk about that, since you're here, and that is your expertise. I would love to hear more about your approach to fertility, especially over the age of 40.
Every
right?
other, well, if you're over the age of 40, that's like the witching hour, which is actually not really true.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of, the fear. Fertility is not just biology and physiology, right? That's only one part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when a lot of the social pressure and the ideas of, how women need to be and perfectionism, and also the medical system that
Mm-hmm.
wants to kind of funnel them into, going and getting IVF, and kind of taking their body out of their hands and handing it over to someone in a lab coat.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a bigger discussion here about women's health in general.
Right.
Most women are on some kind of medication. Many women, maybe when they decide that they want to have children, that they've been on the pill. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
guessing that with your patient population, that you might have found that if they were on mood stabilizers, on birth control, that
Right.
they also end up being on mood stabilizers, because birth control kind of causes a lot of depression.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
mood swings, not just depression, mood swings,
Oh,
anxiety, headaches,
yeah.
migraines, yeah,
Poor
all sorts of things.
libido, suicidal ideation, like lot weight gain, all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking at, a lot of women that are not in touch with their body. They've
Mm-hmm.
also been given the message that their body has flaws,
Right.
and that maybe there's something wrong with them, and the problem is they're old, right? And so we can look at magazines and see, like, the cover of Vogue is going to have someone who's 17.
Mm.
This is we're looking at always this idea of, being young, and then you're over the hill after a certain age.
Right.
And so what I do is, working with these women is really to help one, get them to be in balance. We're going to do things for them. They can do things such
Right.
as their diet and all of the, to really like look at what's in your control,
Right.
and then also regulating the cycle naturally
Mm-hmm.
using acupuncture, sometimes some herbs, and then helping them. The big piece is where is their mind around this, because if they are running these stories
Mm-hmm.
that may have already been there, that their eggs are no good, they're too old,
Right.
that they get a piece of paper that says, oh, you're FSH or you're LSH and you're AMH, and
Mm-hmm.
really this kind of information is not helpful for them. It's just information, but
Right.
it's so really like looking at, okay, this is information.
And it's information at that point in time.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
In fact, I'll give an example. I had a woman who, she called me and she said, oh my God, my, what was her FSH was like 40 or something. It was some amount. And I went, what?
Mm-hmm.
I said, what? Like, it was what? I was like, oh my God, like, really? I've never heard that before. And they said, wait a second. What day did they take your blood?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what day it was?
Mm-hmm.
She goes, day 11. And I go,
Yeah, I know. It's normal.
she was freaking out. It was really like a strange thing, because I said, wait, I've never heard that high. I'm like, that is high. I was like, well, wait. And I said, wait a second. Wait, when did you take, like, what are these numbers? Like, when did you have those numbers? I go, what day of your cycle was that? Because that's unusually high. I've never heard it that high. Never,
Right.
never.
Right.
And then she tells me it was like practically mid-cycle. And I
Right.
go, okay, that's not accurate.
That's
Of
not
course it's going to be
high. That's when it's supposed to be high.
That's what's supposed to be. You're like,
Right.
the time you need to be, if they're going to be checking for those numbers, is really going to be,
Day 3.
like, kind of like even just knowing that, because she was spinning, and then she was being told, oh, you're going to need to get IVF, or you might even need to get an egg donor.
Right. No.
And I was like, whoa. This is.
Yeah. It's supposed to be done at day 3. Day 3 of your cycle. Yes.
Yeah.
That's to see if you have ovarian failure, if you have fertility issues. There's other dates where, for other reasons, you want to do 19 to 22, but it's also dependent on how long your cycle is. So, you pick the date based on whether, if you have a 28-day cycle, but if you happen to have a 25-day cycle, then that has to be adjusted. So yeah, you have to be very, very careful about when to do the blood work or the urine test.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually one of the things that I have them do is like, get off of that app, right? That's like, I'm like, you ditch that digital, because it just tells you, okay, this is when you should be. And so I said, okay, we need to start tracking old school thermometer,
right?
Check your fluid, and then get some sticks and to just, cross-reference so you have a good idea. And it could be your cycle moves depending on, stress month to month.
Right.
Yeah, but you need to like be in control of that narrative about yourself.
Right. And get to know your body.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, not keep asking somebody else to tell you. I'm going to teach someone. I like to, this is how you're going to know. And when you know, you're going to be able to make a better decision about what you do.
Right.
And I'm not against doing IVF. For some women, it's better for them, in terms of their family planning.
Absolutely.
I can't tell them not to do it. What I do is like, you need to be in the best possible shape.
Best possible health. Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I think it's important to, even if you do IVF, you want to be you want your body to be healthy to carry that child, so as well. So, and it's not just your body and your mind, but also your spirit, because all of that can affect the outcome of the baby, even while you're carrying them. So, because stress alone can affect, emotional stress can affect the outcome of that child.
Absolutely. I mean, for sure. Really the worrying during, if they're going through that, they just have it's going to be fine. You're going to be good. Like really, help them to also, once they make the decision, I support their decision. They need to feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a big part of it. So, aside from the acupuncture and the herbs, we do a lot more of that spiritual aspect of it. Mm-hmm. That connecting, the mind-body connection is very important, to be one, not, pulled apart.
Right. Right. Not to be siloed into different parts of you.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big, one of the things about, when you were asking what's the difference between like, Chinese medicine or East Asian medicine, and let's say this Western medical model or the scientific medical model is that, when we talk about the person, we refer to them as the person with the disease, not the diseased person, right?
Right.
And language, using a different kind of language, metaphoric language, for someone to be able to not, I guess, take on the language of like pain and the language of infertility and the language of disease and what's wrong, but really looking at the language that is more transformative, where they can also use that to refer to themselves in that process.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So, we touched a little bit upon age, and I was wondering if you can, expand on that and elaborate more about age and fertility. How much of a role is age, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, there is a point where I would say statistics and reality converge, probably close to 49, 50, right? Where you can say that, most women, when they get to that, period of time when their cycle is weaning, that their chances of getting pregnant and carrying to term definitely diminish, right? But what we have right now is also a lot of younger women that are showing up with low ovarian reserve and a lot of other problems.
Right.
And so it's really very different. So you can definitely say when you're getting into your late 40s, into menopause, that when there are hormonal fluctuations, for sure, there's going to be more challenges and more risk. But the hard stop at 35 or, like there's this number and, women go, oh, next month I'm going to be 34. I'm getting older. I'm 35 okay, just, we can't get so attached to that number.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Really important is what is your health, your overall health.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I remember when my clock was ticking when I was 30. I had my first child when I was 30 and now he's 26. So he's, but I remember myself and some of my, girlfriends, all wondering, oh my gosh, I have to get pregnant before it's too late, So this is something that people have worried about for decades, that at some point you're going to expire. And it's true, but I think that people need to change their mindset about when that point actually is for them. Yeah.
Well, I think if not putting off the health part of it,
right.
Because what happens is like, okay, now I'm ready. I'll do it right before I'm 35 or at 35.
Right.
It's kind of like filing your taxes at the last minute. Something like that. And you're like, oh my God, I forgot all these papers. So it's getting back to what we talked about before, the idea for women to embrace the fact that they are female, that they have this power, they have their menstrual cycle, that this is all, like women's health is really under attended in a way that is, I guess, nurturing. It's usually more about, there are all these problems and I'm just going to give you a pill so you don't even have to bother having a cycle.
Right.
So it implies that if you have a menstrual cycle, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Versus, there could be difficulties that need to be addressed early on.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I didn't even think about it. It's a medicalized approach as an approach that you're a human being who wants to bring a child into the world.
Yeah. I mean, why is it your reproduction is a problem that needs to be solved by, like stopping it? Like having so you start to look at the cultural influences. I mean, in other cultures, it's like the celebration, when women reach menarche, then they're considered, a woman. A girl goes from, being a maiden into a woman, and she has a different status in society. And this is biology. It's part of that, that she's evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And transforming.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's this thing where we got to keep it under control, right? And the thing is, it's not under a woman's control; it's under someone else's control. And I think that's really where it starts: is that this is this thing that nobody wants, and it's a problem.
Right.
And I think that like starts early on, that idea that, oh, my menses is always managed by some drug, and that now when I want to get pregnant, it should be managed by another drug or a doctor, right? So it's really this lack of, being, in control of your body.
Right. So what type of woman comes to see you for help with infertility? I noticed that you have like a certain type.
Yes. The type of woman that comes to see me, highly educated professional, really has, I get partners in law firms, I get women, VPs in finance, really super successful women. And they're married, they want to have a child, it's not working. So a very large part of my fertility practice are very, I would say, driven women that are
okay. So what is it about them that, maybe they're so successful in their work, but there's a part of their life where they don't.
There's a part where they are approaching, and I see this a lot, because they're very smart and they can figure everything out, but this is the one area that they get, flummoxed. And what it is that if you are looking to improve your fertility or to get pregnant, and you're using the same approach that you use when you get your advanced degree or your job, and the more you push for being perfect, the more it like escapes you.
You hit the nail right on the head. You
Yeah.
totally hit the nail right on the head with that, because it's the approach that needs to change, the mindset around it. Yeah.
Yes, and it needs to be what I call a fertility mindset, is really the kind of the shifting. And I'll tell you, like, things like the moment, and it's not, because a lot of it is like, oh, do I have to give up my job? Do I have to da-da-da? Like, there's a lot of conflict of what does it mean, my identity, or can I have it all, or now I have to just stay home and bake cookies, or like there's a lot of like these things. And it's really a big part is making the decision that being a mom, because they want to be a mom, but like to really connect with it, like this is an important thing. Like the career stuff, I can always get it back. Like it's the kind of like, I need to really focus on, if this is something that I want and it's coming from my heart, this is really important. Kind of like part of your purpose.
Right.
A little part of it, not your only purpose,
Right.
but it is an aspect that is open for women to carry babies, not for men, right?
Right.
At least as far as we know, until science does something else. And they're trying. Artificial uteruses they're trying.
I know they are. Yeah.
So this is an aspect that I think, women struggle with. They feel like they're going to have to make a choice, and the choice is giving something up that has been hard won.
Right.
Versus this is a beautiful gift and a miracle that I'm, ready to receive, to be able to give life.
Right. And it's more than just receiving, it's connecting. It's connecting to that child. You're right that it's not one of those awards that you get that you can put on your shelf. It's not a diploma that you can put on your wall, to show everybody. This is a child. This is a human being. And it's a different way of receiving. I think
exactly.
It really is a different way of receiving. And it's a level of responsibility that's lifelong. And it can also bring up a lot of issues. Mommy issues and daddy issues come up
a lot
in that process.
Exactly. So these are the spiritual, the emotional and spiritual aspects.
Right.
When I'm working with women. So this is like the first time we're really like getting into this. I've been on like a bunch of podcasts. So there are, and it is in my book where I talk about like blocks, like energetic blocks that you don't think. There's a lot of the, if there are issues that you had with being a parent, or when you were a child, if you had like childhood emotional neglect is a really big one.
Right.
Then there's a conflict of like, why would I want to bring a child into the world? It really sucks being a kid. Right. Or I'm going to be this parent that is going to abandon my kid and work all day, or, whatever their experience, it does come up. Absolutely. And it comes as a block that needs to be resolved. Right. So it's like the energy that you're sending out is like, I don't want this.
Right.
Like, this is not a good thing.
Right.
And so that needs to be resolved and connected with. And that comes up a lot.
It does. It comes up a lot too, from my standpoint too, where,
yes,
in my office, it comes up a lot. And in order to bring that child into the world, you have to show self-love. It's very hard to give to a child, and it's different than a partner. Because it's really unconditional. And if you haven't received unconditional love, and if you don't give yourself unconditional love and put yourself first, it's going to be hard for you to transition to giving that child unconditional love. And so that's a process that's absolutely doable and learnable. Undo those blocks but there's a lot of fear and anxiety around it, for sure. And
Yeah.
and it may be sometimes the reason why people are infertile.
Oh, it's like a the brakes are on. The brakes are on. Somehow it's like willing it not to happen. There's a part that's like willing it not to happen or trying to make it happen a certain way. What it is, and what I found is that it can be just almost like a fleeting thought, a shift that happens of like, you know, this job is not everything, like, maybe I'm like working too much or just something like that, like just like the sudden, like, okay, is this all worth what I want if I want a child? And that is just like the door that opens to just change the energy enough to really like to see another possibility.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's really, I'm glad that you talk about that, because I feel like very few practitioners go there, about the energy, because it's assumed that if you're seeking infertility, treatment for infertility, that you obviously want a child, but you don't necessarily delve into the conflict behind it. And then, if you are actually address those conflicted feelings, you can actually allow your body to become pregnant.
Yeah. Well, those are it's all one. Like, and so the thing is, we can talk about it as like, oh, it's emotional, oh, it's energetic, oh, it's physical. The thing is that we experience it in here, right?
Exactly.
Not out there. And
exactly.
so we can actually talk about it as if it's separate, but it really isn't, because as you know, the more upset someone is, they start having stomach problems, digestive problems,
Right.
like all of those things can interfere in the whole process.
Right.
And so really like looking at it all under kind of like all under one umbrella versus I need to go over here and then I'm gonna go, you're just like, okay, we need to like connect it or help them to make the connection.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, yeah, I thought this was a wonderful conversation. We touched upon a lot of different things having to do with Chinese medicine and acupuncture and how it's connected to depression and infertility. And so I really appreciate your time. And I think you said that you have a free checklist to provide the audience. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how they can get that?
Which checklist is that?
I don't know. You just wrote there's a free checklist.
Oh, it was like a fertility checklist. Yeah. Let me see. I can give it to you in hold on a second, because I closed all my windows here.
Yeah, well, you can send it to me later, but just describe what that is
yeah, I just created it's a checklist for like really looking at like different areas as you're when you're going through with your fertility, like you're emotionally, have you had certain tests done, just to kind of have that as a checklist, and then to later on to really like use that as a place of, okay, what do I want to work on? Because otherwise it's all of these things. So I just made like a quick, I put the Dropbox thing in there for you. It should be just to start out. It was part of my of like a master class, to have for people to look at it and see different areas that what do they have under control, what do they not, what do they want to areas to just work on, because otherwise it's just a big
Okay. Yeah, it's to help organize what's important to them. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little talking piece for them. It's
Yeah. So I will share your contact information with our listeners, so that if they're interested in working with you, and certainly where can they find your book if they want to?
It's on Amazon. I will also I can put that in for you as well.
Okay. Yeah, we'll include that in the show notes and how to contact you if people are interested in working with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can also give you a I did do a fertility, like kind of a master class. I did it actually yesterday. And what I can do is I can copy the link, and if well, it'll be up. I have to make sure and edit it out. I can give it to you.
No worries. No worries. Yeah. So yeah, whenever you can send that to me, we'll just include that into our show notes. And that way people know how to contact you if they want to work with you.
Yeah.
And obviously you're in New York City. So
Yes.
yeah, they'll have to come and see you personally so you can put
Yeah,
your hands on them.
yeah, no, it makes it, it's a different, but there's also a lot, the information that I did offer in the class that I recorded is, for really anyone who is looking to, work on their fertility, to think about it a little differently. How I work with my patients. Of course, if I'm working individually, it's much more tailored, but even like the things that we're talking about today, to really like look at what's your where is your mind, your mindset, how to make that shift, and, some of the exercises around it.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot that can be done that doesn't require an in-person visit, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
And like they're going to be the ones that are, going to be taking their own temperature.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So
great. Well, thank you so much for coming on to my show, Joe. I really appreciate it. It was very enlightening for me. I was looking forward to asking you all sorts of questions about Chinese medicine.
Love it. I love the questions.
Yeah, they've been questions that I've been meaning to ask someone who does Chinese medicine and acupuncture. It's always been in the back of my mind, wondering about it, and I never really had the opportunity to actually talk about it, even though there have been plenty who've crossed my path, but never to actually sit down and talk about it. So
yeah, whatever I can do to help, or any kind of questions. It's important that people have choices and know that there's more out there, and not just think, oh, it's only for one thing. That
right. Okay. Well, you have a great day, and I thank you so much, and I'm sure our paths will cross in the future.
They will. Thank you so much. Okay.